of all things, who cares about landscaping? I mean, it's outside, right? And if you're at Xeriscape, it's a bunch of cactuses and mesquite trees. Bless you. So you really got to do maintenance on landscaping? Oh, gosh. You know, one, landscaping is the most visible, and everybody sees it. And everybody has an opinion, too. It's almost like the inside of your building, okay? So we're going to cover that. General responsibilities in regards to landscaping as far as the maintenance. So there's a lot of components, believe it or not. Typically, we'll contract that out, and we'll let the contractor provide the maintenance requirements. But there is a requirement, though, for the facility manager to be fully engaged in what those maintenance requirements are, such as pruning, especially here in Arizona. We have large, beautiful mesquite trees. However, if you have drip irrigation, you'll notice every time we have a high wind, you'll see a whole tree just topple over, and all the root structures there, exposed and everything else. And it's not like you can push the tree back over and tap the dirt around it and it stands up. It won't work that way, right? So typically you end up cutting the tree down, but you lose an asset, believe it or not. That is something that you paid money for, and you kept, the fertilization, the pruning. So there's costs associated to it. So we'll cover those. The maintenance activities, some of the selection processes for the type of vegetation. Ancillary responsibilities such as signage that goes along with landscaping. Also grounds such as parking lots and drives. So we'll cover some of those requirements as far as maintenance, curbs and sidewalks, anything to do with the exterior part of the building. And then we'll go into conveyance systems. So we'll look at different types of elevators. We're going to look at gearless traction elevators, and we'll look at hydraulics, both with pits and also pitless or holeless, actually, elevators, and those type of applications. And again, elevators, just like landscaping, usually you're going to, well, actually, not usually, you have to. Every facilities organization actually out-tasks the elevator and conveyance systems maintenance. We don't do it with facilities folks. So we're typically going to have a contract with a Cone or elevator, or maybe a Centric or a Montgomery or Otis elevator organization. And they come in and perform the test. And there are certain tests that you have to do per code and requirements for that elevator, because why? It's moving passengers, right? It's moving lives. So one of the items that I'll cover is just the different types of elevators and different types of maintenance practices in regards to that. And then the last item, we'll wrap up the evening with water treatment services. Do you remember the two different types of water treatment services that we went on our tour? Remember the first one? Where was all the sulfuric acids at? Remember that? Up on the roof, right? Do you remember what was around the sulfuric acid tanks? The condition of the roof? Remember that? That was starting to degrade, wasn't it? And again, sulfuric acid and concrete don't mix. And then when you have your drift coming off the cooling towers, especially if it's windy, again, that water is what? It has sulfuric acid. Now, that's something that's going to burn you as you walk by it. But over time, if you saturate the concrete, over time it starts to deteriorate. The second one had a little bit different type of system. They actually had it pumped in. So that was a totally different infrastructure, right, when it came to water treatment. So again, the two bests, right? One of older, I would say, technology versus the newer one. Okay, so we'll cover water treatment. Biocides, we're going to cover why you have to have water treatment in the first place, and what does water do to equipment and the systems. Okay, so we'll look at both closed and open loop, water systems. So getting on with landscaping, primarily professional, need-appearing landscaping provides curb appeal, indicates the level of the company's health and community involvement. Do you think that's a true statement? When you drive by a facility and you look at the landscape, the first thing that stands out is, what's the financial health of this organization, right? Have you ever driven by a building where they don't keep the landscape up? What's the first perception that comes to your mind? Yeah, it's like, anybody live here, right? And what's some of the telltale signs that there is no landscape plan existent? The grass is overgrown, right? The shrubs are not really trimmed to where you can actually see that it's a shrub, right? It kind of mixes in with the grass, right? Trees are left unkept, unpruned, right? Weeds that are growing up. One of the biggest pet peeves of any facility manager are weeds. And what grows a lot in Arizona? You get all the weeds you want, right? Every time it rains, right? Okay. So those are telltale signs. Signage that's in bad shape, or signage that's falling down or faded for some cases. Other examples would be irrigation that's running out into the street. Again, these are telltale signs that they really don't have a landscape plan, maintenance plan. Okay, so if you looked at the picture up here, I mean, it's a nice picture. What do you think of that landscape? Isn't that nice? Isn't that pretty? I mean, what do you got? You got retaining walls, right? And you got individual planters. You got trees. Yeah, you got sitting. It's like a little meditation garden, right? How much maintenance do you think is associated with that? Oh my gosh, imagine that. For one, what do you do with all the prunings? Because this is, I'm sure it's out in a courtyard. More likely it's probably in an upper deck. So those, again, remember I get back to working with the design team and the architect team. So one of the first question is how am I going to maintain that landscape? It looks great. But what happens when this tree grows up to be 80 foot tall and the trunk outgrows its rooting structure, right? What do roots do to concrete? And it heaves it, doesn't it? Okay, so these are some considerations in regards to that. Okay. Yeah, that or breaks. And if this is maybe in the colder climates, do you have opportunities for freezing pipes, underneath the concrete infrastructure? Okay. So here's just some examples, roads and ground landscaping. So again, tree, believe it or not, is just a tree. However, it is an asset. It is considered a valuable asset to the site. And some of these trees, if you tour older sites, some of these trees are historical monuments, really, with the age that they are. There was a Motorola facility in Tempe, and it had a pistachio tree in the middle of the courtyard. And it was the ASU research facility. In fact, ASU took over the building. It used to be Motorola flat panel. And that tree was on our historical records for the state of Arizona. So every year they had our horticulturists come in and give the tree a checkup. So we had to, one, make sure that it had a maintenance plan for this tree, because it was, again, they built a facility around this tree. We couldn't remove it. So it was actually built around this particular tree. And it was planted back in the 1800s with settlers. So it's like, why didn't you plant a tree like across the street where I didn't have to deal with it, right? But no, that's where they planted it. It was right there, right? Who knew that, okay? You notice what's back in here? What's that? It's definitely not green paint. Can you see that from back there? Isn't that ivy pretty, though? What do you think? I mean, look at this. I mean, that's a green building right there. I mean, you can't get any greener than that, right? Oh, my gosh. Imagine what the roots are doing to the mortar. What do you think? It's got to grow in something, right, and pull moisture, right? So then, if you look at it, somebody's trimming that. Somebody's actually trimming the side of this building. So go figure. It would be like overnight, it'd be removed. But then again, you'd probably have, right, a huge riot on your hands, right? And of course, this particular one's just like the other one, different angle, but they've got a water feature, right? All the vegetation. This individual here is probably taking some water samples. But could you imagine trimming these guys here, these planters? And how do you keep the grass from going into the water when you trim it? It's a beautiful surrounding, serene surrounding. Definitely, it probably won some awards. But if you consider the maintenance side of it, in Arizona, what would we have here? We'd have boulders in the middle, right? Rocks. That'd be about it. You don't have to do much to rocks. Maybe spray them off with the water once in a while, right? Okay. And of course, down here is the typical maintenance, right? There's types of equipment, and they all have to be maintained as well, typically by the landscape contractor. So some of the landscape features, flower beds, planters, terrace decks, as we were reviewing before, and retaining walls. Retaining walls have a purpose. And believe it or not, they're going to require maintenance as well. Okay, structural cracking, fatigue, okay, delamination. Okay. Roads and ground maintenance, again, continuing. This is just typical landscape, okay, maintenance. Turf cutting, obviously you got to mow the grass, okay, thatch and detach. Here in Arizona, we plant ryegrass in the wintertime, don't we? Because what happens to Bermuda in the wintertime? It goes dormant, doesn't grow. My house, my Bermuda, goes dormant. I planted ryegrass 1 year only. That was all it took. By the time I unclogged the lawnmower, mowing that ryegrass, and how much water it took to keep it green, it looked great. It looked beautiful. But after that first winter, I was like, that's it. My Bermuda is going dormant like the rest of the neighbors. I am not going to do this again next year, right? And that's what I did. Okay. Tree pruning, okay? Requirements on the height, but primarily pre-pruning is one so it doesn't become a wind sail. So you prune the branches, obviously, to one, relieve the weight on the main branches so they don't collapse and fall on a car. But the big item is when you get high winds, it basically goes through the tree instead of up to and around the tree, where it tends to push it over. And in Arizona, we don't have hurricane-level winds. Fortunately, knock on wood, right? Okay. But any wind, if you don't have a good root structure, will topple a tree. Okay. And then again, that requires some sort of maintenance and repair in regards to that. Okay. Typically just replacement, hedge, bush trimming. Same thing, fertilization. This primarily, these two, is also for safety considerations. So one would be security, to make sure that the cameras are not impeded by the trees. And typically, they'll plant a tree or install a camera in front of a tree. That never fails either. Of all the places you could put this camera, you put it right in front of my pine tree, which means now I've got to top the pine tree, and what happens to the pine tree after 2 or 3 years? It dies. So it's like, well, why don't you just tell me to remove the pine tree in the first place? I would just cut it down and not have to worry about this thing, right? Okay. So safety requirements. Signage would be another one that you'd have to keep a close eye on their maintenance plan for landscaping. Stop signs. A lawsuit, I didn't see the stop sign because, one, I took a picture and I couldn't see it through the shrubbery. Yes, I could make it out behind the bushes because it was a red-looking thing behind there, but it didn't say stop, so I didn't stop right into somebody. Other items would be trespassing signs. Some cases would be directional signage would be considered as part of that. And then overall, just the appearance of the shrubbery, okay, for your facility. Anybody been to Disneyland? Everybody's been to Disneyland, right? Did you ever look at their shrubbery? Isn't that something?
It's a small world.
Oh. You know how they do that? You know, you'll touch it. It's not real. I know it's not real. It's plastic, right? No, it's real. They have a whole nursery. They just plug and play. It's like removing a light bulb. They remove a bush and put another one right in its place. That's kind of cool. If you ever have a chance to do the behind-the-scenes tour on that. Fertilization, okay, dethatching, edging, and aeration. Obviously, again, to make the turf look, one, healthy. So all those are going to be required maintenance tasks, typically performed by the maintenance contractor. But nonetheless, they're going to have a maintenance plan. Just like we have for air conditioning systems and electrical distribution, you're going to have it for landscape too. So pruning you'll do at certain times of the year. If you have any type of trees that have any type of buds, such as olive trees or orange trees, okay, mulberry trees, you'll also go in and spray those as well. One, to keep the pollens down, and then also keep the fruit down. Okay, there's nothing more messy than to have an olive tree in the middle of your parking lot. Okay, because then what happens? People step on the olives, and what do they track it into? Into your building and across all your floors, right? Okay. We've got orange. Everybody's aware of ornamental orange trees. I don't know why they created those trees in the first place, but you can't eat the fruit because it's very bitter and very sour, right? So we planted Arizona sweets as our ornamental trees died, because they were planted back in the early 70s. We started replacing them with Arizona sweets from one of the local nurseries. Now, when the fruit becomes ripe, I don't have any problems with gleaming the trees. The employees do that. Now they know which is the good oranges, so they'll bring the grocery bags and just completely fill them, which is kind of neat. So they take it and take it off the site. Okay. Again, two different types of maintenance. One's going to be zone maintenance. Okay, occurs when specific supervisors and crew are assigned to a specific area, such as a lawn crew. All they do is take their truck and trailer to site to site to site, and they have all the equipment to mow the grass. That's all they do. They don't prune, they don't edge, they don't plant. Again, you call this a zone crew, and they have a complete zone region, if you will. And then you have another crew. All they do is plant. So they go in and replace vegetation, flower beds every year, and so on. Okay. The second one is going to be the broadcast maintenance. That involves crews with specialty functions, such as trimming. They have to be specially trained and licensed to actually trim a tree above a certain height. Okay, so if you can't reach it with your pruning pole, and then you got to have a licensed tree climber that can actually climb that tree with ladders and spikes, such as palm trees. Okay, so those are going to be requirements. Specialties would also be herbicides, applying to herbicides for weed control and also pest control. They're also going to be considered separate, okay, in regards to that. And that's all specified within your service level agreement and your landscape maintenance plan. And of course, roads and grounds. Does that look familiar? It's a big old campus, isn't it? So if you can just imagine, you know, all of this requires maintenance. Sidewalks. Looks like they got a river here or something going on here. But not only inside of the buildings, but everything external to the buildings, part of your operations and maintenance plan. Okay, so with that includes roadways, sidewalks, okay, parking lot. What are you going to do to sidewalks? It's concrete. Well, you know, one is to make sure there's no cracks, right? Tripping hazards. Okay, sidewalks, splitting, delamination on the sidewalks, especially if it's back east and you got to salt them, right? Would be one culprit. Here in Arizona, we get the phenomenon, the skateboarders love it, when the sidewalks heave, right, with the heat. What does the heat do? It expands the concrete. So unless the expansion joint's just stressed to that point, you know, it'll heave that sidewalk. Then you got all the skateboarders and the kids on the bicycles trying to jump over that, right? Okay. Yeah, or crash, okay. Parking structure is going to be considered part of your roads and grounds maintenance. We'll cover some photos here. But parking structures, regular sealing of the concrete, looking at your lighting systems, your security systems, communication systems, your access, such as your arms, okay, your card readers in regards to your parking structure is going to require maintenance, periodic maintenance. Landscaping we covered. And then site utilities. In some cases, you may have a certain area, such as here at ASU, they got all the chases through your main walkways between buildings, and those have your utility chases for the infrastructure. So power, processed waters go through there, connectivity go through there. But those are going to be considered your site utility, okay, requirements. Okay. So here's just a few snapshots. Okay. Pavement maintenance, okay, routine work performed to keep pavement under normal conditions of traffic and forces of nature as nearly as possible, and it's as constructed conditions. So one item here in Arizona in pavements is oxidation. That's one of the biggest culprits we have here, the sun. Okay, so if you look at these pictures, how would you explain that one? That's pretty hard to fix, isn't it? So just spell it differently, just say it differently, right? So that happens, okay? But if you look at these potholes, right, you see some of the unraveling that's going on in here. You know, you definitely got, right, the bird baths in here. You got the alligator cracking in here. But again, part of your pavement maintenance plan would be to have regular pavement inspections done every 2 to 3 years. And part of that is overlays, and you got seal coatings, you got slurry seals, you got full replacements when it comes to asphalts, patches. So when it gets to this point here, you've probably gone beyond the base. So that will probably require a significant patch. So by the time your parking lot got to this point, there's not much left to really maintain. It's just going to be a complete remove and replace. Okay. Here's another shot. So really, that's almost down to the original base, right? Nobody parks over here anyways. Okay. And of course, here's our favorite tree. Notice what he's doing to the sidewalk. Okay. And of course, what are you doing to the tree? You're watering the tree, right? So again, the water that gets out into your pavements, again, create other hazards. Okay, water. Okay. So some of the maintenance requirements is assessing the condition of the existing pavements and what's the life remaining in that particular pavement. At General Dynamics in Scottsdale, do you remember the rubberized asphalt? Remember that back in the 80s? What they did is they ground up old tires and they mixed it with asphalt. And we were one of the first sites, actually, we were a beta test for the city of Phoenix. And our parking lot is actually a rubberized asphalt. And gosh, it was installed in '84. So I'm coming up on 30 years on my pavement. I mean, it's definitely showing its age and it's deteriorated. But in some cases, you know, you can still see where they turn the tires on it and how it still unravels the asphalt. I mean, it's still pliable. It's not like it used to be, obviously, but I definitely got my life out of that asphalt. Okay, and with that, I've done slurry seals. I've done some overlays in that for certain sections, replaced certain sections too. But overall, for the parking lot, still in pretty good shape. Crack seals and so on, regular maintenance. Prioritizing the condition and current needs is main drives will probably be one of your priorities. Pathways, pedestrian pathways, trip falls, trip hazards. Okay, keeping an eye out for those particular ones. Okay, making sure that you have a maintenance plan for that. And again, typically all asphalt maintenance and repairs are typically subbed out. I don't have an asphalt facility at my site, so I don't make or manufacture asphalt. I'll probably go out to a Saguaro or a Choya pavement and have them come in and conduct the assessment and have them provide that. I don't have the capital or the resources to do that internally. Okay. Identifying maintenance needs, such as striping. Regular striping is going to require regular maintenance. Turn lanes, pedestrians, walkways, sidewalks, okay, crossways, and so on, all going to require regular maintenance for restriping, okay, within your maintenance plan. And analyzing the cost-benefit consequences of each option. So one is I can let this asphalt go for another 5 years. The consequence is I will not be able to bring it back with an overlay. Because again, reflective cracking will come back up through that 2-inch overlay over time, and I got the same, just thicker pavement. So in some cases, I may have to say, well, in 5 years, and I have to go in and completely replace it. Okay, so again, looking at the cost-benefit analysis on that. And then allocating the available funds. So during our tours, we really didn't see any asphalt because they were all within. But as you walk across campus and you look at the asphalt, you look at the roadways and sidewalks, and you kind of think to yourself, somebody's maintaining this. Somebody in facilities is maintaining all the roadways, okay, making sure that they are, one, safe, okay, and they're usable. Okay. So here's some additional ones. Here's some crack. Okay. So basically, it's here they're blown out, okay, with compressed air, and typically, if it's more than 3/8 of an inch wide to 1/2 an inch wide, is going to be a candidate for crack seal. Because once it rains, where does the water run to? Does it run away from the cracks? What do you think? Where does the water congregate when it rains, especially 1 or 2 times it rains here in Arizona? It all goes to the cracks, right? And then once it saturates the cracks, what happens to the base underneath that? That becomes permeated with water, and then you can see the alligator cracking. So as you get traffic that rolls back and forth, that you lose that base, which is usually an AB type aggregate. So then this continues to crack. So then the next rainfall, you got more cracks. So that continues permeating that particular asphalt. And in some cases, for lead requirements, that's great because you're adding back into the aqua system. But in this particular one, it's actually destroying your base. So you blow these out with compressed air, and then you come back and actually put an emulsion, okay, an asphalt emulsion into that. Okay. My parking lot, I actually went through a full 40-foot container tank on some of my cracks. It must have gone deep into the ground because all I know is that's one parking lot and it took an entire 40-foot container, 10,000 gallons of crack seal. So somewhere in China, they got a bunch of crack seal coming out from their asphalt, right? Okay. And then here's another one, seal coating. Okay. So you look at this and you look at the cost. Regular maintenance, it's 90 cents a square yard. So I can do quite a bit if I keep that up, regular maintenance requirements. Okay. However, if I got to go in and actually patch, I'm looking at, well, this is 10 years, it's probably close to $50 a square yard now. So, you kind of pick your poison. Would I rather do seal coats at, cents on the dollar versus let it deteriorate where I got to do complete patches, okay? And again, the patches, the integrity is only as good as how well you seal it. It's almost a roof. It reminds me of a roof patch. The integrity is how well you seal around that patch, okay? And again, you see all the handicaps here. See the landscaping along here? I mean, this is great, but if you consider they're probably due for either a slurry seal or a seal coat. And then once you do that, guess what? You got to go back and restripe everything. Maintenance tips for concrete parking structures. Again, this is now going from asphalt to concrete. So again, regular periodic washdowns in regards to the garage slabs. Petroleum products, antifreeze, transmission fluid, motor oil, gasoline, believe it or not, will attack concrete. One is concrete's porous. So over time, okay, that will also affect concrete as well as freezing water. So sealing your asphalt will be required, repairing spalls and delaminations, okay? And it's all subject to movement. Concrete moves. Okay, so with that, regular inspection is going to be key and extremely important, right? Surface treatments such as seal coats, severe cracking or displacement should be assessed by a structural engineer. So I got a couple pictures on that. What do you think? I think we got a problem here, right? So I would imagine there's probably a cooling tower above this structure. That's the only thing I can think of. Because if you look, this must be a roof drain of some sort, right? And as you see the rust that's coming around that, the delamination of paint and the bubbling, I mean, there's got to be some water coming in. So one, find out what the source is, and then fix the source. Okay, remediate that. Okay. How about this one? It's like a design. What do you think? It's like planned. It's an architectural feature. What do you think, Sanjeevi? Huh? Maybe? No, I don't think so, right? That's rebar, right? So you kind of wonder. I know, it's kind of like, you walk through these garages and it's like, well, okay, I think I'm going to turn around and go park out in the street, right? Paint's great. Look at the paint. Sprinkler systems are great. It's just this little piece here, I mean, you can always put some spackle on it, right? Yeah, just cover it real good. How about this one? You notice what's here? Right? I mean, definitely getting some moisture, migration, right, coming into that. This is the one that scares me. I mean, it's not like you can put a screwdriver in there and pick at it and drop it out. It says, okay, now we're fixed, right? Because now you look at it, it's how far into the rebar does this go? If that started to rust and expose through, I can just imagine how the rest of that girder looks like, okay? And, of course, what's that holding up? 8 stories of parking structures full of cars. So I definitely want a different parking spot. I want to park on top. I don't want to park on the bottom anymore, right? Okay, so again, regular inspections, periodic inspections to look, okay? And this one here has definitely seen some use, right? Exposed reinforcement. It looks like there was a low truck or tall truck or something that's going on here. But, you would probably say, it says, well, that's not working. We definitely got to do something different here. Maybe lower the bar or something, okay? So parking garage cleaning versus maintenance. Routine cleaning, just regular items that you can almost do with in-house personnel. Upkeep of stairwells, replacing the lights for security requirements, sealants, drains, especially the scuppers, making sure that they're not clogged where you retain water, okay? May give you some issues and problems. Power washing and power sweeping. Okay, routine maintenance. On the other item, though, maintenance in regards to expansion joints, control joints. Okay, are the expansion joints still there? In some cases, you'll see them heave as well, giving you an indication of movement of concrete. Requirements for further inspections. Okay, periodic penetrating sealers going into the concrete itself. Again, you're maximizing the life of that concrete, just like you're doing for asphalt. Any other piece of equipment, roofs, structures, whatever, I want to optimize the life cycle, okay, of that particular material. Okay, seal cracks just like we did for the asphalts. And then drainage repairs. It's amazing that a lot of parking structures, I mean, what do? You just park cars there. But you've got elevators and you've got stairwells. You've got ventilation systems as well, especially the subterranean parking structures. Okay. The other items would be signage. Okay. Has anybody ever parked in a parking structure in a different city? You've never been in a city and you drive into the parking structure. How important is the signage? Have you ever gotten lost in a parking structure? Like drive around in circles and pretty soon someone like points at the right direction, right? I'm following the exit signs, right? But I'm going nowhere, right? Okay. Just as important as the infrastructure itself is signage. In the event of an emergency, where you park, where you don't park, right? And then, of course, the parking stalls. For some reason, the deeper you go, the narrower they get. It must be for smaller cars or something, okay? But the difference between routine cleaning and, of course, maintenance requirements for parking garages.